Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I'm your host, Ike. And before we get too sucked into this awesome interview, do us both a favor and like, subscribe, and share this amazing piece of entertainment because I am here with the one, the only, Tyler!
Hello, Internet.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How about you, man?
I'm doing pretty good, but I am just dying to know, what is your favorite dad joke?
My favorite dad joke. What's an astronaut's favorite part of the computer? It's the space bar.
You know, you can actually get those. You can order spacebar keys that have like an astronaut drunk, like leaning on like a line. It doesn't say spacebar. It's like one of those like context jokes, but
Right. Yeah. No, that's pretty sick.
It's freaking great. I love my spacebar now, but if I didn't, oh boy, I'd be about it.
Yeah, I have a bunch of mechanical keyboards. I guess that's like another hobby I have is collecting and building keyboards. But I look through like keycaps sets all the time and you see some pretty good stuff.
No, I have spent there are way too many tabs that are designated to just like I can't justify buying them yet, but I can't like bear closing the tab because then I'll like forget about them, and they look so cool.
I am the proud owner of a 1986 Model M Space Saver keyboard that cost me way too much money.
Nerd.
Yeah.
Said with all the love in the world.
Oh.
Bringing it back to the pot a bit, what is your favorite underutilized word?
My favorite underutilized word, it's dredge, and not strictly for its actual definition, but I think this is the fun part about slang in general, is assigning new meanings to words. And I think a cool thing you could do with dredge, and I guess like a usage I have for it, is like going through my messages, or I would say dredging through messages to maybe like find a link or find something that you said. And I think like having that, just like the word dredge paints like a really cool image in your head as like this is a physical action I'm doing in like a digital space.
It gives it such also like a very visceral feel, and it's got like this kind of tangibility, and like there's so much that it adds. You know, it gives it that joie de vivre. It gives it that like notion that you're not enjoying it necessarily, like that's an ask, and you know,
yeah, like this is work.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's an adjective that, you know, paints a whole entire picture unto itself. It's so great.
Mm-hmm. Slang in general is just really cool.
Oh yeah, slang when it has. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily slang though. Isn't that just kind of like,
I guess, repurposing a word or a verb, rather?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's using it like almost like ironically, or like it kind of reminds me of like when people, like if somebody was to like say they were like drowning in heat or something like that, or you know, they were like making, just kind of using the word mildly incorrectly, but to like tell a more deep painting of the circumstance.
Right.
Like it doesn't feel like when somebody says bet now to me in no context as an affirmative, it's like that to me stands out as like slang, when like a word has been completely retooled to like have none of its like initial meaning. That's kind of feels like what the slangifying is to me these days. But I get your point, but I do love when words, especially ones that are so colorful and like, I don't know, there's something just kind of like, it's like a great piece of cake or like a piece of pie, like the word dredge. There's just like so much going on phonetically and also meaning.
It's like good art. It's just like, oh, I can literally visualize you doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not like actually doing it, but like, oh, it's,
yeah, it totally fills out it totally fills out your circumstance to the viewer. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a movie you will never skip when channel surfing?
I would say the Disney Channel.
Netflix.
the Disney Channel original movie, Brink, the roller skating movie, or rollerblading movie rather.
Brink.
Yeah, Brink.
Is this the? No, this is the.
Team Puppet Sons.
One.
Yes. Oh my god, I love.
Oh
that
my
movie.
gosh, I haven't seen this. Is this the one where like the two friends have like? It's like they have like a roller skating fight down a hill, and somebody like sprinkles gravel. So
Yep.
trips. Oh, dude. Deep cut. Holy shit. I haven't thought about this in so long.
I grew up on like Disney Channel movies, so Brink was my favorite because I liked to rollerblade a lot as a kid. But like there was the motorcycle one. There was Smart House. I remember Smart House. I specifically remember Smart House too because they had that one, like I think it was like a Welsh pop band like Bewitched or whatever. I forgot what that song was, but that was like probably one of my early like favorite songs.
That's so cool. I remember that movie. It's like it's playfully hokey, but it like kind of, I don't know, very much fit that kind of demo. Is so great.
Yeah, there's something like very like growing up in the 90s about it.
Yeah,
like it's into the turn of the 90s. Millennium.
Yeah.
Oh, that's childhood right there.
Deep. I'm gonna need to take a moment and like, get some band-aids to help me recover from that deep cut. Jeez. While I'm patching myself up, what would you say is your biggest everyday temptation?
Biggest everyday temptation?
Yes,
on a day-to-day basis, it's trying not to consume all the chocolate in the break room at work. I love chocolate. Chocolate is great. I eat too much of it, and I need to stop.
What is your... If, let's say, there are 5 chocolate bars laid out, is there a type of chocolate or a company or like a filling that really just makes you uncontrolled?
Chocolate and mint. My grandmother growing up would give me like these little Andes bars, and I guess you would get them at like you would get them randomly at like Olive Garden too after your meal, but it's such a grandma like candy to give out. And we have them at work now, and I am obsessed with them. I am obsessed. Holy crap.
Like, one of the problems with it is it gives you that minty feeling afterwards, which I at least associate with like toothpaste and like floss. And so there's a part of my brain that's like, yeah, you didn't just consume bad stuff. Look, your breath is nice.
Yeah.
And so like there's a part of me that's just like, yeah, I'm not doing something outlandishly bad for my overall health. My breath smells good.
Yeah, we're doing fine. It's like I brushed my teeth. And
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
And at least with Andy specifically, I feel like the mint is not super overbearing.
No.
Which definitely doesn't help, because it's like, oh, I could just go through like 10 of these and not realize it because I'm not like burning at the mouth from all the mint.
Yeah, it's not like a peppermint patty where it's just like,
Yep. Having said that, I do also like York, but definitely in smaller doses.
Yeah, that one is one that you can't OD on. There's no way. You just like, unless you're like a mintophile, like no dice.
Yeah, exactly.
Growing up, did you have a favorite book or one that you look back on now as like kind of like that was my childhood?
I read a lot of like the Artemis Fowl series growing up, and I don't remember anything about them now. But it's definitely a book series I read through like sort of like late elementary into like all throughout middle school. And I couldn't tell you the first thing about it, but I remember reading, I want to say it was like 6 or 7 books if I can remember correctly.
I think probably 6. I think it's 6 if you read them like back then.
Yeah,
those are. I did the same a little bit later. My brother, I think, got into them in grade school, and I kind of picked them up in high school. And I was like, "Whatever, kids' book." And then I started reading. I was like, "Damn, this thing slaps."
Yeah, it's pretty good. And then immediately after Artemis Fowl into high school, it was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh damn!
Yep,
highbrow so quick.
Oh yeah, look at me.
High school highbrow right there.
And I had my cousin had bought me like, I guess it was like an anthology, but it was like hardcover black with like gold lettering, and like the edges of the pages were in gold. And that book got beat to hell from like just being moved around all the time.
Book bags and yeah.
I think actually it's still at my parents' house. It might still be in the attic actually.
Recover that old.
Yeah, I might have to go back and reread it.
Yeah. If you had to evacuate
those. Sorry.
If you had to, God forbid, if you had to evacuate your house, what's the first non-living thing you'd grab and rescue to safety?
Probably my favorite Magic deck, which would be Modern Storm. One, because it's like a easy thing that I kind of always have put together, so I could like grab it and go. But that deck, I would say, defines me as a Magic player. It's the deck I've played continuously for the longest time. It sums up exactly what I want to be doing in a game of Magic the Gathering, which is something a little like Rube Goldberg-y, where it's just like a bunch of moving parts that kind of come together and just randomly kill you. And also, I don't want to interact with you. We're playing...
We're playing a game together. How dare you assume that we want to...
People call it... People in Magic call it like solitaire when you're just like trying to focus on yourself. I like to call it social distancing Magic. I'm going to interact with you. It's just going to end in your death, and it's all going to happen at once. But until then, we're going to stand 6 feet apart, and we're just not going to talk to each other.
Oh, God. What's your favorite industry secret or term that's only used in your line of work?
So I work in IT. And it's just, this is less of like an industry like term and more of just a way for IT people to be mean to their quote unquote customers without actually being mean to their face. We have a term called PEBKAC, PEBKAC, which stands for problem exists between keyboard and chair. And as you can probably take a guess, that stands for user error. Another one along the same line is error ID 10T, which if you type it out, it just says idiot. But it's just a way for IT people to be like mean in like our ticketing system without like actually telling the user, yo, you're a moron.
Yeah. It's like an inside kind of joke and like way to release a little dopamine hit and like know that you're superior without making somebody feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something I've definitely moved away from, like going through my IT career. And I think that's a big problem people in my industry have, is like getting over that superiority complex or being like, oh, my users are idiots. And it's like, you have to help them out. It's your job.
Yeah. That's why you're there. If they weren't idiots, you probably wouldn't be employed.
Yeah.
Is there a piece of advice you've been told over the years that has made the biggest impact on you, or that you find yourself pondering even to this day?
Not one that I took seriously until it happened. But I think the generic piece of information that no matter what happens, you'll live. Like, oh, you can mess this up, but you'll live. And I didn't really take it seriously until I had to drop out of university. Mm-hmm. And I thought, up until that point, I'd been kind of scared of disappointing my parents. And this was like the ultimate, like, oh, I fucked up. Like, I dropped out of school. I can't, like, oh, my life is just going to be miserable now. And it's like, it took a couple days for like things to sink in, for me to like, all right, I got to start looking for a job. And realizing that, oh, I had like this computer skill to fall back on. I was very fortunate to have like a trade that I was at least proficient in, that I could build a career off of without necessarily needing school. But I thought my life was over until like a couple of days after, and I realized I just woke up again that day, and I had work to do. And it's like, oh, I guess life doesn't end like after a colossal failure. Like, you can move on.
Yeah, that's an awesome thing to remember. And at multiple times in my life I've been reminded of that. You know, you like go to sleep kind of freaking out, you wake up, and then it's just like it just kind of dawns on you. You're like, oh no, I'm totally fine. This is like it. I'm still in a poopy situation, or you know, like maybe some things happen that I didn't like them to happen. But as much as it feels like it, this actually isn't the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Given the opportunity, what would you say is your favorite personal anecdote to tell?
So, I was at a Magic tournament back in Florida. And this kind of spawned the greatest, like, or I guess the longest lasting inside joke of all of my Magic friends back home in Florida. We were at, like, a state championship. It wasn't particularly big. It happened at, like, in Orlando at like a Holiday Inn in their little convention hall that they had. It was like one of those like hotels that if you go to like Orlando to vacation, you're finally bringing the family to Disney World, but you need to like cut costs, you end up here.
Yeah.
Like not
Vacation on the budgie.
Vacation on the budgie, like you're surrounded by like actual tourist traps that aren't Disney and you're not on Disney property. So it's like one of those. It's not like a great...
It's like the Florida Project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But round one, I was playing some like atrocious like Esper Tokens deck. This was right after Return to Ravnica released. I was playing like Thauron's Invocation and like Lingering Souls and Enchanted. It was a mess. The deck was just atrocious. But my round one opponent shows up late. So it gets a game loss. So we start playing for game two. And he's on blue-red. I want to say it was like Delver or like some like blue-red deck that had Mizium Mortars. And I go to attack in for lethal. And he tries to cast Mizium Mortars, which is a sorcery, on my turn. And you can't cast sorceries on your opponent's turn. You can only do them on your turn. And I look at it. And I kind of do this underhand, like, point at it, like, my fingers out. And I just say, that's a sorcery, bro. And that's a sorcery, bro became, like, the inside joke for, like, the next year and a half. My friends were, like, standing there because their matches had finished already. And you just see one of them, like, burst out laughing, and he has to, like, run out the room. As soon as I said, that's a sorcery.
That's a sorcery, bro. That's awesome.
Ugh, that was hilarious.
It's funny how the things that are so benign can like catch so much air.
I think it's just like it's the random phrase and just catching it at the right time where everyone's silent and then all of a sudden you have to like exclaim this fact and just people go bananas because it's like we're in a tense situation and then like oh, a mistake happened, lighthearted thing.
Yeah.
It just catches you at like a really good mood shift, I think.
Totally. What would you say is your favorite little known fact?
My favorite little known fact. So I grew up in near Cape Canaveral in Florida. It's like right in the middle of the state on the East Coast, Brevard County, but it's called the Space Coast because obviously Kennedy Space Center is there. My fun fact is that the area code 321 actually was not supposed to be assigned to that part of Florida. It actually belonged... It was going to be assigned to suburban Chicago until a man named Robert Osgood, I think his name was. Or sorry, Osband. He petitioned to have 321 be assigned to the Space Coast of Florida because of Kennedy Space Center and 321 blast off. So to this day, I still have my phone number with the area code 321.
Awesome. That's so cool.
And that's the easy way to know I'm getting spam calls because no one from 321 calls me anymore. Oh, sorry. There is a cat on my desk. He just meowed into the microphone.
Only one subject per podcast, please.
I know, he just walked up to the microphone and meowed.
He wants his turn. Sorry, you're next, buddy.
I know.
Fill in the blank for me. This weekend was so great. I spent 13 hours
playing Magic.
Any format, any place in particular that like would be your preferred go-to, or places that you would like to kind of run back?
Modern mostly. I just think it's a really fun format where you're enabled to do mostly degenerate things, and even though interaction has gotten a lot faster and a lot more free in the format recently, thanks to Modern Horizons 2, there's still sort of a space for you to put together these sort of crazy things. I will say the format in general gets a little too good stuffy at times, and maybe there are a couple of cards you're sort of required to play in the format. And Pioneer is probably right now a better Brewer's Paradise if you're so inclined, but Pioneer is also not nearly as powerful of a format, and powerful formats are fun. Besides that, within Los Angeles where I live now, Turn Zero has been a pretty solid store. I used to play in Heidi Ho Comics in Santa Monica, but they have since then sort of downsized their operation, but it's a store I definitely miss a lot.
Can you think of the first or most impactful memory you had when you realized you weren't so alone in your struggle, or more like everybody else than you had previously realized?
More like everyone else than I realized.
How about I give you an example?
I actually kind of have an answer for this, and it's
Okay.
I think it's relatively recently, actually. And I sort of figured this out kind of browsing through. There's an album I got really into toward the end of last year. It's an album called Emergency and I by this band called The Dismemberment Plan. And it's like, if you go to like Pitchfork or like one of those like sticks up their ass music websites, they're like, this might be like one of the greatest indie albums of all time. And I think it's a really good album. But the album itself is sort of about like going through like your early to mid 20s, and like maybe you haven't like done the thing, you're not like perfect, or you didn't like build this crazy career, you're not rich or whatever, you're just going through life, and like the struggle of realizing like it's okay to be a little listless and you'll figure it out eventually. And I think I was struggling for a way to describe how my early 20s went, especially after like, oh, I didn't go through school, and then I kind of moved to Los Angeles. I didn't really have a plan. I was just kind of sitting here living, and it's like, am I missing out on something, or did I do something wrong? And I thought this was a feeling I kind of just had to myself, until I realized, oh, this is a very common thing for people to just like, they didn't all figure it out, but they're kind of just, they make something work and they're living. And there's not like, I wouldn't go as drastic as to say they have nothing to live for, but there's nothing to like for them to accomplish, I guess.
Yeah, there's no big movie like storyline or purpose or like end goal that like happens in fiction.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in your life, yeah.
Yeah, but it's okay to just kind of live and just have these experiences instead. You don't have to change the world. You could just be you, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things that I've noticed over experiencing my life, is that idea is like so put upon us as an American culture, because the amount of like movies that are made and the kind of our zeitgeist, how so much of it is influenced by film, is that we are kind of subconsciously, I think, put under the expectation of like, oh, we should be living our life like a movie storyline, and then kind of like comparing notes and looking at how other people achieve so much and so little, and yet here we are. It's like, yeah, it's because that's not reality. All you see in like when you're watching movies or when you like read pieces about some famous person, is you're watching somebody who got lucky, who or is different than you, or is fabricated. Like, so much, one, story is obviously fiction, is like completely fabricated generally speaking, but also like so much of the stuff we read about people is the highlight only. Half the time the jam is pumped up a bit so that it seems more impressive, and like they're kind of fudging the facts a little bit when they use certain words and like to talk about themselves, or like, when the person's talking about themselves, some people, especially like kind of magnate people of like our society, they just leave out all the bad and they only talk about like the highlight reel, the big moments, and that's all we see. And we look at our life, and then like, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes like the high moments comes with the lowest lows, because it's like, oh, that thing was so great and now it's gone and now I'm back to being normal. Damn, this sucks. It's like, yeah, but that's how that is for everybody. It's just like they're, you know, when you write a story about somebody like that, you only see that because that's what they want to focus on, because that's like the amazing thing. Nobody wants to, or very few people want to focus on the reality of the situation or the struggle of the situation or the sad parts of the situation.
Yeah, and I think that was something I just eventually needed to realize. It's like, yeah, you know, I just want to go like experience my things. I don't need to like living for work is a big, I guess, thing within tech, especially, where it's just like people work like 60, 80 hours a week and they gotta like invent the thing or change the world or like be a part of like the next big social media platform or something like that. And it's like, bro, I just want to like make enough money to like do my hobbies and like travel.
Exactly.
If I get to like see the world and just do what I want to do, I'm okay. I don't need to put in 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I'll give you my 40 and I got a life to live.
Yeah. And it's like such a great lesson for people to like, or just like a truth almost, I would say. Not even a lesson. I think that's just a truth for most people's reality, is to be okay with that. And just like, yeah, you're not going to do, like, if everybody did the next, it's kind of like that hokey line that just holds way too true and way too many paths alive for me. In Incredibles, there's this moment, and it's like,
oh, is that if everyone's special, no one's special? Something
yeah,
like
and
that.
when everyone's super, no one will be. It's like, yeah, what we like to have a claim for there to be intrigue. By and large, it seems like to me anyway, there needs to be a difference among persons. Otherwise, nobody would be. You would laud no one if everybody was the same,
right?
You know, and so part of the spice of life is having people be better at you than things, and vice versa. And so, like, not to look at that as a negative that, oh no, we're not all getting to enjoy this, but just like kind of accepting what you have and enjoying that. And just like when you start to, and this is something I still constantly struggle with, is accepting my reality as normal, and that I'm not like lesser than because I haven't achieved all these things that I've wanted to, or that society has made me think of. It's just like letting go of that, accepting your situation, and finding the kind of just enjoyment of that like calm serenity. Because one of the nice things, and I think, you know, you're talking about this with like just doing your job, coming home, playing, you know, games, hanging out with friends, and then like traveling, is like, there's the amount of stress in that is, I don't know how much stress there is in your job, but the amount of stress in living your life when, you know, what you want to do is so, you know, I don't want to say purchasable, but kind of is. You know, like playing a game, getting good at games is obviously hard, but like playing a game, hanging out with friends, assuming you're not a caustic asshole, and like traveling, all of those things are things that you can budget for.
Right.
And so it's not like you're having to like win this lottery. It's like you just have to be not an idiot with your money. And
yeah,
like you too can have this like sweet life as long as you accept that, you know, that I think like one of the most important things, it sounds like anyway, is that accepting that you're okay, and that you're not like fucking up by doing this.
I think it's accepting that you're okay, and then being aware that even if your hobbies come across as like, oh, it's childish, or oh, it's like you do things that are like for kids. In the case of me, where it's like I play video games and Magic, and it's they seem a little juvenile, but it's like I'm okay as an adult doing those things.
Yeah,
and I'm very comfortable with just buying the shit I buy, and it's being cool about it. I think too many people try to like grow out of hobbies and they get into like more expensive things because it feels more adult, and it's like maybe you're trying to live too much above your means in that way.
Yeah, maybe go fuck those people that told you what you liked was childish and do what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if you're enjoying yourself, not hurting anybody, if somebody belittles you, you know, flip them the bird and go back to enjoying your life. Because clearly they are not doing that for, like, if they have to go out of their way to be like, what you're doing is childish, one, maybe they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and two, like, sounds like they're not enjoying their life that much, so why listen to them? If like haven't figured their shit out, why should you let them dictate what you should figure out?
Mm-hmm. And especially living in Los Angeles, because you kind of you see the excess a lot around the city.
Not only the excess, right? But like, I mean, I've noticed around here, there's the excess that people esteem to, and they feel like they need to, like, keep up with the Johnsons and Joneses or whatever the fuck that cliche is. But like, this idea of like, I'm better than you, there's so much like pejorative interactions I've noticed where somebody has to like put somebody down to like make themselves feel better. It's like, can't we both coexist and like different things, or like things that are even like, in mild conflict, like, why does one have to be better than the other? It's like, so much of life is just differences, not, the amount of conflict in, especially when it comes to like interaction and like hobbies and stuff like that. I feel like so much of it is just like unnecessary. It's like, let's just both enjoy our thing.
Yeah. Too many people are still hung up on like what others think. And I'm not going to sit here and say that sometimes I don't worry about it, because I do. I'm human, and I'm frankly, I'm a little paranoid about things like that all the time, but I can at least be aware of when I'm thinking about it and be like, nah, that's kind of stupid. I'm just going to go back to playing Magic and buying Sanrio stuffed animals. I'm doing okay.
All right. Lastly, before we throw it to commercial break, if you could have listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
This one's kind of tough. And it's not because I have like exquisitely great taste, or I like tons of music. I'm very basic, where it's like I just like guitar music, especially electric guitar music. But there's a good intersection between guitar music and anime, because I'm a gigantic nerd and I like anime. Weeb. I know. There's a show, I want to say in the early 2000s, called Fully Cooley. It was my first anime. It's my gateway drug, basically. And it's a really short, like, it was a 6-episode thing. It's like a coming of age story. It's nothing super crazy story wise. It's a little over the top, but in a fun way. Yeah. And it was more of like, for the studio that did it, it's more of a way for them to experiment with either like a new technique or some new art style. Like, it wasn't meant to be like a thing. It was just, we'll pump this out for like 6 episodes just to like try this out. Mm-hmm. And I love it. It's like a great coming of age story, like I said, but the entire, or I guess most of the show, is backed by a soundtrack from this rock band called the Pillows, a Japanese rock band. Very Pixies like, but most people, if they know what I'm talking about, would know a song called Ride On Shooting Star. That's like the end credit song for all the episodes. But I think my favorite song that's on the show is I Think I Can. There's nothing like too crazy or fantastic about the song, except for the fact that it starts and ends with the same sort of riff. And in the show, they use it for a fight scene, and they bookend the fight scene so well with like, just before the first hit, you hear the riff, and then it goes into the song. Or I guess it's like a reveal. It's more of like a reveal with the riff, and then just before the last hit at the end of the fight, the same riff plays again, and it bookends the whole like sequence so well.
That's awesome. And with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy the totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy I Think I Can by the Pillows. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeps podcast Song Rex. Long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Having trouble staying awake?
Oh, yeah.
Wish you'd followed your dream so you had the give a crap necessary to meet your deadlines?
Oh, definitely.
Are you likely to be fired the second another warm body walks through that door and asks your boss for an application?
Probably.
Would you prefer to keep this shit sack of a job instead of explaining to Susan that you've been fired?
I mean, I guess.
Well then, let me introduce you to caffeine. Caffeine is a highly addictive substance that'll keep you jittery and energized to do any fucking stupid task for hours.
That sounds like drugs.
It is.
Aren't drugs illegal?
Not this one. So next time you feel like sitting on the sidewalk instead of at your desk, reach for a caffeine.
Wait, you didn't tell me where I can buy it.
Because it's mother loving everywhere, you blind Neanderthal. Welcome back, everybody. So, Kyler, what is the passion you have brought with you today?
Oh, I didn't know if I could fit it in this bag. I kind of had to drag it here, and it's spilled. My passion's all over the place. Oh shit.
Sounds like you've got a passion problem there, pal.
I do have a passion problem. I'm really big into esports, by and large, as an industry, as a fan, as someone that has tried to play video games at like a somewhat high level. I've done a little bit of like for fun coaching, nothing serious, but competitive video gaming is a big passion of mine.
That's awesome.
It is.
I've been told it's the future.
It's the future. Now, it's a interesting sort of industry, especially right now, because it's sort of young, but transitioning out of this whole like Wild West ideal where it's just like grifters upon grifters just trying to take advantage of something that's exploding in popularity. It's stabilized a little bit more these days. You'll still get like grifters and just people trying to do one-off things just to like get their quick buck and leave, but it's a industry built on a lot of passion, and both a good and a bad way. Good in that people generally give it their all when it comes to not just being a player, but like like graphic design, supporting a team, or like their social media. People are very like passionate about doing these things and supporting the industry. That also comes across with sort of labor exploitation. Maybe salaries aren't all they're cracked up to be in the space. A lot of the money comes from sponsorships and tends to get funneled through suits and stuff before it trickles down to everyone else in a company. You still hear various stories about orgs that you thought would be more legitimate, and then they just kind of close up shop one day and people come out that like, yeah, I haven't been paid in a couple months.
Oof.
But
that's not cool.
That's not cool. But by and large, it is. I'm a very competitive person. Having grown up in like a very traditional sport household too, and I played a bunch of sports growing up, and I always had that competitive drive, but I wasn't good enough at sports to really like put that somewhere until I found video games, and it was like, oh, like a switch like flicked on for me. It's like, wait, I could put my all into something like this, and I can see tangible improvement in how I play and just get better and better and better. And there's a way to compare myself directly through like a ranking system, depending on your game, obviously. But
yeah,
that's always.
What was the? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
What was the first esport that you came across? Like, what's the first one that you saw being played that kind of like gave you this moment?
When I was younger, it was definitely like a lot of Halo, because Halo was kind of the big shooter game by the time. That was like when first-person shooters finally broke out of, we would call them the boomer shooters of like Quake, and I guess less boomer shootery thing, more tactical FPSs, Counter-Strike, and those were mostly like a realm of the PC players. Halo was the first console shooter that really took off, and that fostered a competitive scene that you would see on like TV. You would see Halo tournaments on TV, which is kind of crazy growing up. And that was definitely the first esport that kind of like, oh, I'm aware of this now. This is something cool that's happening. And I kind of kept tabs on it into like college. But I would say the first one that was like, oh, this is really my passion now, is more relatively recently, was Overwatch. That came out in 2016. But they were having tournaments all throughout beta. And you would see, I was always really interested in the game from like an outsider perspective, but then seeing tournaments and seeing these players and getting to know a scene sort of as it's actually forming and you're kind of entrenched into it, really like, oh, this is something that appeals to me a lot. I was trying to get really good at Overwatch. I was playing it an obscene amount of hours a day. I was calling off of work to grind ladder in Overwatch. That's where we were.
Sounds like a healthy obsession.
Just, yeah, very healthy. Very
what was
not
what was it about Overwatch that entranced you so much? Can you put like a finger on it for you that like made it so compelling?
I think it was, I'm not someone that like tries to be the center of attention or like I want to be the big carry player. That's not really me. I'm a very big, more of like a supportive type player in the shooter space at least. And Overwatch provided that sort of role for me I could be a off tank player, whereas I'm not the main tank, I'm not leading the front line, I'm not leading the charge, but I'm the guy that has to play from front line to back line, and I mostly either protect my teammates, and maybe I get to do like a little bit of, all right, I need to like carry this one fight. You kind of have to be everywhere all at once, especially in the meta of early Overwatch, where you played a lot of the character Diva. Diva was basically, she could do everything. She could kill like a DPS. She protected her teammates almost like she was obviously the best tank at the time, but she could protect her teammates really well, and it's a role that had a lot of mobility, and you just had to be everywhere all at once. So it was, for my ADD brain, it was like, oh, I have to be here, I have to be here, I have to be here. There was never a dull moment because you have to be everywhere in a fight. And it was also like a good way to contribute to a team in a very positive manner without having to be in the spotlight.
So what makes, like, I know from our interactions together that you're a baseball fan.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about esports that stands out so much better, or it takes such a high seat on your like kind of like viewing registry compared to like traditional sports?
One is definitely the ease at which I can watch an esport, because Twitch is free. Most tournaments happen on twitch.tv, a streaming website, and it's just so much easier for me, who grew up around a computer and is very aware of how computers work, to just, I just go on the internet and I can watch esports, and it's just really easy. And outside of a few esports, and I will say Overwatch is very guilty of not being a very easy game to watch. Most esports for me are just very like, I could look at it and in 2 or 3 seconds I figured out, all right, this is where the game state is, I know who's winning, etc., etc. You could kind of jump in and get into it relatively easily.
Can you say that about, is that true for most esports, of people who wanted to like kind of check them out?
I would say,
or is that
Counter-Strike and Valorant are definitely your easier esports to get into. I think shooters in general are a little bit easier to get into, because it's very easy to be like, point gun at dude, he dead. That's positive. Something like an Overwatch.
That's a good thing.
Good thing.
Point guns at people, they die, you're the good guy.
Rocket League is another good one because it's car soccer. That's very easy for people to understand. MOBAs and by extension Overwatch, even though Overwatch is a shooter, are a little bit more complex because you're not strictly playing for kills. You're playing for multiple objectives on a map, and it's not always clear who is winning, especially looking at a scoreboard, because you could, in like a MOBA, you can have the most kills, but you could also still lose the game even with the most kills, and that's sort of like the prominent score when you look at a scoreboard.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's coming up at a time where more people are cutting cable. It's harder to watch live sports these days than it was in the past. Everything is either gatekept behind millions of networks or millions of streaming services, and people are cutting cables out of their homes. I don't even own a TV. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard for me to watch baseball outside of like maybe listening to it on the radio or sailing the 7 seas and pirating it. So esports just kind of has that ease of access for the younger generation. And it's still like, granted, the last couple of years with the pandemic, it's been harder to see live esports and like watch people play on like on a stage locally. But there's an energy there. And if you watch a whole, like really old like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike LANs, we would call them, local tournaments, and you'd see people like get up out of their chairs, out of their computers after like a particularly like sweaty round or something. They're just yelling at each other like across the convention center, just like the great trash talk. And I think that fueled a lot of early esports. Now it's a little bit more corporate, and you'll still get hits of trash talk, but it's not the same.
Yeah,
but there's still an energy to it that is very similar to live sports if you ever go and watch like a live esport event.
Awesome. What would you say is the biggest misconception about esports by the wider world?
Um, Probably that it's it's obviously we're just sitting here playing a video game, but it's still a lot of skill, a lot of time you have to put in to be the best. There's so much competition because in general video games are much easier to access than like certain sports. Hockey is a great example of a sport that's really hard to access because you need to be near like an ice rink. You have to pay for gear, you have to pay for ice time. It's a very cost prohibitive sport if you're getting into it when you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
Esports, outside of probably getting hold of a computer, and you can go to like PC cafes and play there too for a much cheaper fee. Much easier to get into. It's easy to glean information from and get better at games, just putting in time. But it's still something that at the highest end requires a lot of skill. There are people constantly trying to replace your spot. People that play at the highest levels put in a ton of time and a ton of work. Just as much, if not more, than people in actual sports.
So, I want to kind of go back a little bit. You touched earlier on there was some problems with esports, especially now because it very much is in its infancy, right? It's only been around for like probably 10 or so years. And there's people that are taking advantage. There's too much work that's being done by certain people without getting the kind of like pay that is, in your opinion, due to them. How would you go about fixing any to all of these problems in esports? What do you think needs to happen to kind of move it in a more positive direction overall?
I think in general, it's kind of happening already, where certain players of like certain video games have unions at some of the highest levels. Right now, the unions are a little bit of like, oh, we have a union to say we have a union. We're not actually doing anything. We're not actually regulating these things. And I think players really need to take that into their... I think they need to like actually take advantage of that and be like, no, we are talent. We are marketable, because a lot of these players have really good social media followings. They have brands outside of just, oh, I play for this organization. It's like, no, they're a brand unto themselves, just like a professional athlete would be.
Yeah.
You're a very valuable piece of labor, and you need to realize you are as such, and probably unionize. I think what's also helping is more and more actual professional sport organizations are actually now buying into either like franchise slots for certain leagues, or they're developing their own orgs to sponsor teams for games that don't have franchise leagues, as organizations that have this experience in dealing with talent and providing proper pay for these sort of things enter the scene and push out the people that generally aren't having your best interest in mind is probably also going to help. It's just a matter of time. Unionization and bringing in people that actually know what they're doing.
Would you like to explain one of your favorite non-obvious aspects of esports to the listeners out there who very well may not be familiar with them?
I think an underappreciated part of esports, and it kind of depends on game, and I'm speaking more toward team-based esports, is players that kind of specialize in their role and know what they're doing. Like, we have a lot of games have positions just like in regular sports, and it's kind of cool seeing people, all right, we got to build this team out. We got to find these players that have chemistry with one another. Team building, I guess, is a way of putting it. Team building in esport, it's just as important as it is in regular sports. So it's not like you could take the 5 best players and just stick them on a team together and hope it's going to work out. You have to still like make sure that they get along together, that they're willing to work, and that they can take either similar levels of criticism. If you have a coach that maybe coaches in a certain way, you got to have all your players cool with that. There's still a human element to it that I think is underappreciated. And at the end of the day, it's work, and it's you're working with 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Like, you're working with kids basically, and it's like maybe their first real job for real money, playing a video game, which is kind of cool. But there's still like an office politic aspect to it that I don't think people realize, especially younger viewers that just kind of see results.
Yeah. One of those very like inside baseball aspects to it for sure. That's so cool, man. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
Now moving on to something a little less jovial and perhaps a little bit more jarring. What is your preposterous peeve?
I cannot fucking stand balloons. Being in the same room as balloons, like the sound of like balloons rubbing together, like that rubbery like sound, and balloons popping. I think this stems from maybe like my sisters popping balloons at me in childhood, but like loud sharp noises, balloons popping, like fire alarms at school, especially ones that are like way too loud, very sudden loud noises just bother me so much. And balloons, it's just like, it's like a ticking time bomb when I'm in a room with them and they're like rubbing together, or like some goober's like playing with one, he's like beating on her, they're like bouncing in the air. I'm just like, oh, just stop, please. I cannot stand it. I almost have to like walk out the room at times when there's like a bunch of balloons around. It's just, and people cannot leave them alone. I can sort of tolerate it if they're just like there for decoration and people are leaving them alone. Yeah. But as soon as someone like starts playing around with it, I'm just like, that shit's gonna pop. I'm gonna hate it so much.
I need to go.
I need to go.
What about like Mylar balloons?
Mylar balloons are a little bit more okay because they don't pop extremely loudly, and then
also they're like pretty hard to pop, right?
They are pretty hard to pop, and they don't do the obnoxious noise when they rub against each other. Yeah, those are a little bit more okay, but still not.
So like the day that every kid around our age group had of going into like a science class where the teacher like wanted to show you about static electricity. They're rubbing the balloons all over to get it so they can like, you know, raise your hair off the top of your head. That day in class was just like pure torture for you.
So when I said the day I dropped out of college was probably the worst day of my life, no, that was the worst day of my life, was static electricity day at like third grade science or whatever. Yeah. The actual worst day of my life right there.
When do you remember this coming on in your life? Is this like from day one? Was it like, do you remember the first time that your like sister messed with you and was like popping balloons at you? Also, popping balloons at you?
I think it's like just kind of like I have a balloon, I'm gonna pop it. Oh, it bothered my brother. Let me try it again and see if I get a rouse out of him. I don't remember when exactly it happened, but it's a very early like. I remember being in like
formative experience,
first grade, and this bothered me to no end.
Oh wow, it's impressive that you remember first grade.
I remember.
But I guess when you have bad balloon experiences in them.
I remember being bothered by it. I don't remember much about first grade, but I do remember like being really young and being really bothered by balloons.
So, would you rather be in a room with a petulant child who's like, you know, just got like, you know, he hasn't trimmed, or he's either hasn't trimmed his fingernails in forever, or they got trimmed poorly and they've got the sharp edges, and there's just a gobble of balloons, and the kid's deaf or like doesn't care about the sounds of balloons popping? Or would you rather be in a room with like random wild animal?
Those animals could tear me apart for all I care. It's basically death no matter what room I go in.
At least this way you won't have to go out with a bang.
At least if I live, there'll be a really cool story to tell about the room full of wild animals, right? I'm not.
No, it's just one random wild.
Oh, it's just one random. That's still a good story. I'll take my chances. Fuck balloons.
All right, I think we've milked that that golden calf for all it's worth. So with that, we're gonna head to our second ad break, but don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Kyler is going to enter the lightning round. So you should like. Stick around. Little rhyming action there.
Nice.
Do you ever find yourself doing a mundane activity with nothing to keep you from gouging your eyes out or sticking a pencil through one ear and out the other?
Uh-huh.
Well, then perhaps I could introduce you to music. Music comes in a variety of different types, flavors, and colors. Theorists say that it's the best thing to introduce to your life since food. So go out and get some and make your life just a little bit more bearable.
And we are back. Kyler, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round?
Ready as I'll ever be, sir.
All right, put however much time to bake this cookie on the clock. Kyler, is there a God?
No.
Shakira's voice in Danny DeVito's body or Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body?
Danny DeVito's voice in Shakira's body.
Have you ever paid more for a meal than you made in a week?
No.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Another amazing thing.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
No.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Fist fight.
If you had the power to see the future but couldn't change it, would you use it?
No.
Kill the spider or get an adult?
Kill the spider.
Is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
Yes.
Kanye.
No.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes.
Which do you max out first? Intelligence, charisma, or strength?
Intelligence.
Are we alone in the universe?
No.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Gilbert Gottfried.
Are Cheez-Its addicting?
Yes.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Do the dishes.
Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses.
Would 16-year-old Kyler be proud of where you are today?
Yes.
Do you create your own thoughts or just listen to them?
I listen to him.
If you have to have only one for the rest of your life, which would it be? Which would you choose? Rice or pasta?
Rice.
Would you put your brain in a robot body if you could?
Yes.
Shape-shifting, but only into a chair, or super strength, but only when you're super tired?
Super strength, but only if I'm super tired.
If someone you cared about asked you to help them cover up a murder they had committed, would you help them?
Yes.
Would you rather punch a capybara or hug a boa constrictor?
Punch a capybara.
Would you rather be followed around by someone playing a tuba or a freestyling jazz poet for the rest of your life?
Tuba.
Would you rather have flight or invisibility?
Invisibility.
Vests or opera gloves?
Can you run that one by me again?
Vests or opera gloves?
Vests.
Your significant other is missing. Who do you reach out to for help? A cop you've lived next to for 10 years, or a hippy-dippy detective an old friend recommended?
The detective.
Is there any hope?
Yeah.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
It's me. I'm out of touch.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1-hour time limit?
Hell no.
Well, either way, congratulations, you've survived the lightning round! Woo!
Woo!
But before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home I'm sure, would like to know, what is your favorite food?
I guess chocolate ice cream.
So you don't think you could, like, obviously you could have 37 scoopful, or like spoonfuls, but definitely not 37 scoops.
Yeah, no way.
It's a hard thing to quantify in, like, servings of.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, most servings are, like, multiple scoops, and 37 would just, like, body you.
And it becomes like a liquid after a while, and it's like...
Oh, it's so good when it's like, just becoming a liquid, though.
If you ever...
Anyway.
You get to, like, drink ice cream. When it gets to that point where it's, like, melted enough you could drink it. Ooh, wow, chef's kiss.
All right. Back to the thing most important at hand. What lightning round question would you like to ask me, and in turn be asked of future guests?
Have you ever buried anything in, like, a time capsule?
Nah.
No.
You?
I have. We
What'd
did
you-
one.
what-
We did one in elementary school, and I think I buried a copy of College Slam, a college basketball game for the Game Boy, the original Game Boy.
That's awesome. Had you already beaten it and like put it in there, or was it like deal with this, future people?
I think it was just something I had that was like, it was important, but not really, because I didn't like the game. So I was like, fuck it. Just toss it in there.
All right, man. As we close up shop, anything you want to plug, recommend, places people can find you or your content?
I stream very sporadically, if ever, at twitch.tv/kaleidocycle. Besides
There'll
that,
be a link in the description. Don't worry. I don't know how to spell it either.
besides that, Overwatch League starts this coming up weekend. I'm very excited for that. Shout out to my best friend, hetero life partner, Freddie, who I've probably linked like this 30 times. So shout outs to him and the rest of the Kermit Discord crew, the old Overwatch team. Shout outs to them.
Aw, that's so sweet. Well, thank you, Kyler, for being my guest today, and special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yes, you listening at home or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps this tree grow. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry, we put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our first Patreon patron, Sibeliello. If you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, the sky is blue, grass is green, oranges are orange. What I'm trying to say is, I spilled some soda on your mini Stonehenge.
Goodbye, Internet.
Goodbye, Internet.